You know the Magna culture, right? Nobody works for me. You people work with me. I'm working for you. The history of mankind has always been dominated by the golden rule. Here's the gold makes the rule. But I don't want to be dominated by anyone. If I feel that strong, I should not be able to dominate somebody either.
Hello, and welcome back. I'm Richard Dolan, speaking with none other than Frank Stronach, our founding father to the Stronach Academy for Entrepreneurship. And as the CEO and the champion of all things Stronach, I'm delighted to always have a conversation with him in the flesh, here in person. Frank, so good to see you, my friend.
Well, I said the same thing. It's great to see you, and it's great to talk to you. I always look forward.
I'm so glad that you say that, because I don't know if your mood and or attitude will change after today, because we're doing something different. You see, when we launched the Stronach Academy for Entrepreneurship months ago, we chose to, with our team, socialize its principles, its value offerings, and its packages. And we were delighted, Frank, to hear from people of all walks of life, from all corners of Canada, even throughout the United States and around the world. People are delighted to learn from you. The man who did it himself, building Magna from a tool shed, so to speak, from a toolbox and a small garage into a juggernaut of a business. People are elated, but here's what's happening, Frank. We're getting lots of questions, and people would love to get to know you just a little bit more before they consider joining the Academy. So we've not rehearsed this. You have no idea what questions I'm about to ask you, but I think it'll be fun. Do you agree?
Well, I always like questions which are not rehearsed. I just say it the way I feel.
I like that, but I have noticed that you don't know if it's going to be fun yet until we do. So let's begin. I'm going to start with what we've come to call identity and origin questions. People kind of want to just get a sense of, given who you were before money and given who you were after you had some money. So here's the first question that we got is, what part of your personality has made you the most money? What part of your personality would you say that is?
Well, it's good thinking and to create a good product.
And when you think about that, if you look back at your childhood, is there any core memory of yours or key experience you can look back to and think that it shaped the way you became an entrepreneur? Does any stand out for you?
No, life is really an evolutionary process, being at the right place at the right time with the right ingredients.
And when you think about, being you without money, do you think you changed the moment you became as wealthy as you did?
No, I don't think so. I've always said basically the same, and I think it's an evolutionary process. And I guess in my case, especially when you get older, it's really important to have a purpose.
Well, and that's a great question. That's a great point you made, because it leads to the next question. If you lost your memory tomorrow, if that happened, what instinct do you have that you think you would lean on to rebuild anything you wanted to?
Well, you can lose your memory, but there are certain thoughts within that still would stay alive, and they could be original and they could be special, right? But sometimes when you get older, you in my case, sometimes I search for the right word.
And here's my last question for this particular section. Do you think you embody a belief about wealth or success that you held dear to yourself about becoming wealthy and powerful and successful in business? Was there a belief that you ever had about that?
No, I think, I lived on a farm, right, with nice forest. Many times I went for a walk and sat down on a stone or tree stumps and counted my blessings. And I've always said, it doesn't matter how smart you are, if the stars are not aligned, things won't work, right? I've been very fortunate and blessed that many things happened, which sometimes I have very little explanation for it, which benefited me or helped me in my life.
A lot of entrepreneurs who right now are overwhelmed with all the geopolitical events that are going on and the shifting tides of economy, tariff wars, actual wars. People want to know, how do you stay grounded in uncertain times? Is there, especially in an era where it doesn't seem you can find the truth anywhere, how does Frank Stronach get regrounded?
Well, if you can. You always like to get to sort out the truth, and does it make sense, and what does it lead to, right? So it's but my slogan always has been make a better product for a better price. So it's an ongoing search.
Here's an interesting question. I think it comes from a lot of our young, aspiring entrepreneurs. And here's what they ask. If there was a camera crew, and you've got a head of filming here, Stephen, who's incredible. But if we were to follow you around for a month, here's what a lot of young people want to know is what would the cameras capture that you hope no one was able to see?
I think I've always said if I talk with somebody on the phone or somebody like, I've always said I don't care if somebody listens to what I say, and I've always been that way. So if I have really been a private person, right? And I said, look, if anybody could listen to my phone calls, right, they would be there within the human touch, right?
I love that. You know, on the subject of fear, risk, and what some in entrepreneurial psychology called sort of the shadow self, this is going to get a bit deeper, and we're almost wrapping up. But was there ever a time in your life you were afraid to lose it all?
Yeah, look, you go to various scenes where it's an evolutionary process, and yes, there were times when I walked a very thin line, and but I recovered, but that's why I'm always saying to especially young entrepreneurs, just make smaller steps when you start out. And once when you feel that the ground you're walking on is pretty solid, it can take bigger steps. But to start out with, make smaller steps.
Did you ever feel the moment you began realizing you were a success? And we won't get into financial measures yet, but when you knew you were growing and you were becoming something extraordinary, more than just the garage, did you ever locate or find yourself to be different? Changing?
No, I don't think so. And people know me. I've been always available to the same people, right? I always had time to. No, I don't think so. I think you get smarter, you get wiser, and thereby you try to see the big picture all the time.
And as you grew successful, we all are the embodiment of already learned behaviors. Was there a learned behavior or an emotion that you had to resist or let go of during your climb and your ascent success?
No, I think I've been very fortunate that I had companies with great cash flow, that I could really dream and say, look, I think this be great for society. This would be a reminder, or this would be a learning curve. So I've been driven. Is it whatever we do? Does it benefit also society?
I'm so sorry.
And I could give an example, right?
Please do.
Plus, the first when I started out my business, the first 5 years, I worked about 12, 14 hours every day, including Saturday and Sunday, right? And after 5 years, I had a little money in the bank, and my main thing was never to go hungry again, right? So that was my main. So anyway, after 5 years, I you could say I have made it, and I had no more worries. And then I said to myself, gee, I gotta take a few days off, or just don't work 7 days, only work five days. And so I wanted to do something which would connect me with nature, right? And so I came to the conclusion I should get a horse. When you really think, horses provided a great service to mankind. Where would we be without horses? Do we look our friends, our best friends? Those are horses. Do we look after them? No. So you might say I created a monument, right? As the Muslims were kind of flocked to Mecca, the Jewish people to the Wailing Wall, the Catholics to Rome, right? I wanted to have somewhere horse lovers would flock to a destination, right? And I built this gigantic horse, and in Florida, called the Pegasus.
The statue.
Yeah. A legacy, right? The Pegasus, right? And anyway, the Pegasus was fighting what I thought was a bad creature, right? And a dragon, right? Dragons always been like the bad guys, right? And Pegasus always were the good guys, right? But the world has always been dominated by the good spirits and bad spirits. Every day, we got to make decisions. Is it good or is it bad? Is it right? Is it wrong? Is it constructive? Is it destructive? Every day, in a small way, but, and from time to time, maybe every few weeks, you got to make big decisions. But pretty well all people have to make decisions every day.
Frank, a lot of entrepreneurs that write us, that speak with us here at the Stronach Academy for Entrepreneurship share the same thing. They make tough decisions. Sometimes they're right, sometimes they're wrong. How have you lived with yourself after making a wrong decision?
Well, again, you make smaller steps when you do, and as years go on, and you be in business, you get wiser, you get smarter. It's an evolution, and I think if you be with it, and if you listen, and you come to the right conclusions.
But have you ever wrestled with a decision you made that was wrong, Frank? Did you ever make a decision as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, as an employer, where you knew you made the wrong decision and wrestled with it? Do you ever recall a time that it was a tough one?
Yeah, I think when I run for politics the first time and the second time, I think I wasn't quite wise enough, right, or had enough experience that I could get a message across, right? Okay, and so when you do get older, do you have the right message? A message would penetrate to your soul, right? That people would think, gee, I want to be part of it, right? And that's the very key, and that takes a long time to find the right message which will be beneficial to people, right?
I like that. And speaking of the message, a lot of entrepreneurs end their day and start their day looking in the mirror. And they often have reported to us that they often don't like what they see, and they don't have what it takes to live with what they've seen throughout the day. Has Frank Stronach ever looked in the mirror and not liked what he's seen? Had that ever occurred to you in your career?
Well, it's, yes, you got to look in the mirror from time to time. And I looked in the mirrors over the years. Especially, I started to look more in the mirror about 10 years ago. And
you thought to yourself, gosh, I look better every day.
Yeah. And so, anyway, so when I looked in the mirror, I was on the board of quite a few universities. So I criticized myself and said, look, Frank, you done the usual thing, what directors do, but you were not innovative, you were not, where have you been? I always thought I was very smart, but I said, gee, I still got a lot of learning. But anyway, one of the conclusions I came to was, in regards to universities, what's the mandate of a university? The mandate of a university, as far as I'm concerned, and as far as I would preach it, is how can we teach young people to have a more civilized society? Or maybe more specific terms, universities would be ideal institutions where we could search what structures do we need to lead to ideal societies. You know, in universities, we got great faculties in medicine and technology and art, but we have very few, the minimum amount faculties on humanity. Okay? So look, if we haven't got a plan, or a roadmap, what would be the structure of an ideal society? You could never find it, right? And we are missed. There's absolutely nothing there.
Well, this is an inspiring moment because we're going to change gears a little bit. You see, as we launched the Stronach Academy for entrepreneurship, we are working with people who are just getting started, scaling their business, and looking at different levels of both success and succession, exit, legacy. You've lived through all three of these particular phases of an entrepreneur's journey. And many of the questions I just shared with you are coming from people who are established and mature entrepreneurs. But there's a large cohort, and you hit the nail on the head just now, Frank. This is why we're shifting gears to young people. I've had the pleasure, along with your chief of staff and our colleague, Ivana, and the team, where we've watched you in front of young people. And young people today are confronted with a intoxicating level of comfort. And there's a piece about them where they're not in a rush. They're not hungry like you were when your stomach was empty. Here's a couple of questions that come from young people that want to start businesses. How do they find what you've come to call their affinity? But I also would like to extend it to say maybe identify their hunger, their drive. What would you say to the kids out there right now who want to be entrepreneurs, want to be Frank Stronach, but aren't driven?
Yeah, kids especially, I hear remarks that the kids are a little different. There's maybe no drive. There's no thing here. Yes, the learning aspect hasn't been the greatest. We got to really improve the school system, right? And we got to be careful too. First of all, we got to develop what are the minimum standards of a civilized society. We got to establish that. The minimum standards are, in a civilized country, no citizen should go hungry, must have access to food, okay? And that shouldn't be that difficult. We got a great army, and armies are trained and geared for when major disasters strike, that they do things. Might it be flooding? Might it be the electric system going out of service? It could be great havoc, great problems, right? So that's why we do need armies, and armies could have soup kitchens. It doesn't have to be gourmet food, but it should be healthy food, right? So, but nobody should go hungry, and people, especially women and kids, should have a roof over their head, right? They should not be sleeping below a bridge or whatever, right? So we gotta have minimum standards. Mainly, there should be in the cities, right, where for every 100,000 people you need a social service center, right? And this way you get. So we want to teach kids. Look, if you will want to live, that's your choice, right? You get the thing here, but deep down, everybody wants to have a better shirt, better shoes, a better bike, a better car, a better house, right? So thereby, but it does not work, right? When you just get the monies, right?
Well, and here's what young people want to know. And by the way, for the record, you are wearing nice new shoes right now. So you're not just making the observation, you're living the observation, Frank. And for those who are just tuning in, it's Richard Dolan in conversation with Frank Stronach. We're talking about the Stronach Academy for Entrepreneurship, and we've taken some early questions from aspiring minds and entrepreneurs who are looking to start, scale, and even succeed in their entrepreneurial efforts. Frank, you've been so good. Thank you so much. But let me get back to the point.
But I should really say, because I made very little remarks on regards to the academy, right? I think the great thing about the academy would be that we could give advice, right? Situations do change. You have different structures, right? Let's say you got a small company with 5 employees. You need different structures than you have for 20 or 50, right? So let's say with 5 employees, you need a different structure. When you get 50, it might be different. When you have 500, again, it's very different. 5,000, then get into the 50,000 and so on. So we could give it twice, and have a real lifetime structures, right? How to, those things you don't learn in universities or in anything here. And we all know that very few people understand the economy, right? And so it's amazing. It's the most important subject. We don't talk about the economy. All politicians, all business people, pretty well all people agree if the economy doesn't work, nothing else will work. You cannot feed the hungry. You cannot look after the most fragile people, the elderly, the sick, and the handicapped. So we do not talk. How do we feed the hungry? How do we look after them? If the economy doesn't work, it doesn't work. The most important subject we don't talk about. The message I want to get across loud and clear is, without workers, you can't make a profit. So it's so important. And again, I'm not preaching, I'm not talking to take away from the rich. I'm just saying it's important that we uphold the capitalistic system. The capitalistic system needs harnessing when they get large. But below 300 employees, let it be the capitalistic system, or I would rather say the free enterprise system. Without free enterprise, there's no free society. We got it. That's a fundamental statement. So free enterprise is very important. So companies below 300 employees should be able. We got to take the chains off the red tape. Let them give them some room, right? Little small businesses make very little profits. Rather than paying taxes, they would rather buy a new machine or hire 2 or 3 employees, and the government would make the profit or make it the higher taxes when a company hires more employees, because you have to pay an income tax. And if the owner of a small company takes out some money, he also got to pay whatever the tax rate will be, what he takes out. So, but the very key is we got to get small business involved. Small business is the backbone of any country. It's the key. There's a lot of signs now that Canada has major problems, right? And so I'd like to highlight what are the signs. One of the number one sign is 50 years ago, when the first computers came on the market, the slogan was, if you got one of those computers, you could eliminate a total office floor in a high-riser. When I look around now in the cities, I see 20 to 30 times more office building high-risers. What do they do in there? They don't make any products. It's regulations, right? So that's a major thing here because our small business is over-regulated. So basically, I want to get the message to small businesses. First of all, timing has to be right. If the timing isn't right, nothing will function. The timing it's sad, but it's a fact. The fridge is going to be half empty, and a lot of mothers will ask, how do I feed my kids next week? So the timing is very important. And then you need a constituency. Without a constituency, you can't change things either. And sometimes you got to look back in history, and you got to who were the great politicians or statesmen. Clearly, a standard is Winston Churchill, right? In his later years, he said, "Damn it," he says, "Parliament doesn't work. There's only politicians in Parliament. The mandate of a politician is to be elected or re-elected. We got to change that. We need a chamber of citizens to get Parliament working." In my case, again, we learn sometimes by analyzing other people's idea, and there's nothing wrong with that, right? Maybe you could improve a bit the idea. But the Chamber of Citizens would be, in Canada, would be small business. Small business, look, they got to sit back and think, do I love my kids? But the way things are going, there's no great future, because the debt is rising like crazy, the bureaucracy is rising like crazy, the imports are rising like crazy. It's like a freight train going down the hill with no brakes on it, right? So we got to think about those things. And small business would be, we'll call it the Stronach Academy for Entrepreneurs. We wanna inspire the entrepreneurs. We want to inspire a small business. Look, if you band together, you have a huge political force. And I would like to see the Economic Charter of Rights being part of the Constitution in Canada. So the message I want to get across over and over, the Human Charter of Rights alone is not sufficient. We have to fortify it with an Economic Charter of Rights. Economic charters of rights will lead to economic democracies, and economic democracies are the basis for democracy itself. So the fair enterprise system, which I established about 50 years ago, right, is a forerunner for the economic charter. And it gives you so many new innovative ideas how to deal with business. Again, when you be smaller, a few employees, a little larger, et cetera, et cetera. So I've gone to those stages, right? And there, I can recite them. I can easily say, well, that's what I've done when I had 50 employees, and that's what I did when I had 5,000 employees, and that's what I did when I had 50,000 employees, or 100,000, or 180,000.
A lot of people would ask that the life and legacy of Frank Stronach is not just going to be limited to Magna International and the work that you've did there, whether it was the 180,000 employees that you had, the tens of billions in sales a year, the countless factories around the world. Your life and legacy is going to come down to, in addition to all the memory of your economic impact, is going to be in your championing of this cause, establishing a chamber of citizens which embodies fair enterprise as not just a philosophy in business, but also a philosophy in life. And if I may, this economic of charter of rights and responsibilities becomes the new conversation of Canada's future. So here's my point, which brings us back to the top of the conversation around young people. Would you agree that young people who are looking to make the greatest life possible for themselves in Canada, being an entrepreneur might just be the greatest chance they've got to doing just that while also making Canada great again, if I may?
Yes, and we gotta, there has to be, there's little inspiration now, right? So what the parents might have said, look, be a lawyer, be a financial thing, but there's no great inspirations, right? So we must the free enterprise with very little government interference, but that's for small companies, right? When companies get larger, or the capitalism needs harnessing, right? When they get larger, right? So we got the message has to be understood. Small companies would be the savior of Canada. Canada's been such a great country. So we got to get back to give small business, we got to take the chains off and the red tape. And at the same time, you got to band together. And I'm not talking bad about the politicians, right? The problem is, I had Brian Mulroney was on our board, Bill Davis, Mike Harris, and a lot of great liberals too, and the president of the World Bank was on our board.
Well, and if I may interrupt for a minute, when you were indicted into the Hall of Automotive Fame, you had dignitaries of nearly every country in the world singing your praise because you impacted the world economy, not just the Canadian economy.
But the message I want to get across, when you meet the politician on an individual basis, they're good people. They really want to do well, but they're trapped in a system. We got to change the system. So when young politicians get elected and they got that spirit, I want to change Canada, the older politicians say, you can't say that because that would be new. When you bring forward something new, it could be criticized easily. It's always easier to criticize something, right? So that's why the system doesn't work. I'm appealing to the politics. Look, we got to change the system. And we could change it. In essence, we need a revolution. Not a revolution, a destructive revolution. A revolution of the mind. Well, the economic charter would be a revolution of the mind. It's a very civilized approach. Everybody would get a bigger slice of the cake if we let employees participate, and most of all, we could eliminate poverty.
Well, Frank, I'll say this as we begin to wind down a conversation about the Stronach Academy for Entrepreneurship, and I know that our partners, Ivana, Sin, of course, Steve, the revolution of the mind has already begun. Quick story. You had time to spend with my son, Mateo, and he's just one story. And because of our history, I was grateful that you spent time with him. And here's a true fun fact. This boy was a bona fide university student. After his first year, he spent an afternoon with you. Immediately following that afternoon, he was haunted by the notion that he must catalyze for himself a revolution of the mind. My son, with 5 of his best friends, just embarked on an entrepreneurial journey, 18 years of age. And I said, what has possessed you to do this? You're a student. Get your education, get a degree, follow the path. And he said, no. Frank Stronach told me to find my passions by playing with those passions, test drive them, get out there, use what I have to find my affinity. And I find it remarkable as both that's a compliment to you and a thanks. But what I find fascinating about young people is they just want the assurance that the direction they're heading in is the right one. And what I love about the Stronach Academy for Entrepreneurship, it's not just the things people will get, Frank. It's not even the insights they'll receive, the newsletters they'll have access to, the chance to meet you and ask questions. They just need to know, does Frank Stronach agree with this direction? Frank, what would you say to them when it came to you knowing of your conviction, with your direction? How did you know you were on the right path for yourself? What would you say to them?
Well, on the right path is if you make great products, if the workers are happy. Okay, if the workers are happy. So the main thing was every day when I went into the factories, what do I have to do that workers respect me, right? Okay, it's respect. It's you gotta, they know. Society came a long way, right? From the caveman to the hunted, and to the kings and servants, and now we have bosses and disgruntled employees, right? So the system has to change, and many systems have, like I stated, if you're the caveman, the hunted, the kings, the servants, the bosses, we got to change the system, right?
Yeah.
The political system needs fine tuning. It doesn't work that way. We got to realize that, and the economy plays the major force, right? Without the economy, nothing else will work.
No.
And so we got to be careful that we don't baby. Usually if parents go to hard times, they really baby their kids, and I hope my kids should have it better, but you shouldn't baby the kids, right? Like if you want to do better, you gotta think, you gotta work, right?
Yeah.
But nobody should go hungry, right? So that's the minimum standards we got. We got to have minimum standards. But with the COVID, with the sickness we had, a lot of people got a lot of money, and without working, without doing, and they think that's going to go on like that. It can't be, right? Governments can't give you anything unless they take it away from you on the first place. But we gotta have minimum standards. There's nobody should go hungry, right? Okay, but so somebody wants to do well. He wants to eat maybe in a very nice 5-star restaurant, right? Okay, what's wrong with that, right? But minimum standards, we need that.
So in the handful of minutes we have left in a conversation with Frank Stronach, our founding father of the Stronach Academy for Entrepreneurship, I must ask you just a handful of questions on behalf of young people.
Yes.
Young people who are in colleges, in universities, leaving high school, and have aspirations of being an entrepreneur, just like you. Here it comes. Some of the questions they would ask of you is this. First of all, how did it feel the moment you found out you were a billionaire? What would be your response? How did it feel when you first opened up your bank statement and thought you were only worth this, and all of a sudden it was reported to you or communicated with you that, my gosh, you just achieved that 9th zero? What did it feel like?
Well, what it felt was, I can do even greater things for society. Okay, that's my first reaction.
And as you had that reaction, the next question they would ask is that, was there anything in your life as you continued your entrepreneurial ascent? Was there anything that you saw and thought to yourself, my gosh, I've made it? Was it a moment when you bought a home, a farm, a racetrack, a car? Was it a thing? Was it a possession?
No, it was not a question of having collection or thing. I think I've done things here which I thought are very useful for society, right? Okay, and again, we as people we should be loyal to call it creature. Horse is a creature, right? And horses were they provided the best service, to plow the fields, transport the people, etc., etc. Right? And we're not really taking care of the horses. The horses should have a special status. So it's very important when you have more monies, the money should be used to do things which benefit society.
When you had money at the rate in which you grew, was there ever an experience you had where you lost money? You made a poor investment, you placed it somewhere that you shouldn't have, and when you had that experience, how did that leave you feeling? How did Frank Stronach deal with that?
Well, when you have lots of money, make sure you invest. You could invest in a number of things, make smaller investments, and you take a look. That investment turns out, and then you could put further monies in, right? So just don't make a big jump, right? And take again smaller steps, or don't go in a very deep water, right?
Last question, and this is probably a special one because it's so true. As you know, in the history books, if you go online, research Frank Stronach, look at your history, one of the most undeclared victories that you scored for mankind is you're likely measurably the greatest individual who's ever created more millionaires per capita on the planet, given what Magna did, sharing the profits, exercising the fair enterprise system. What young people and aspiring entrepreneurs want to know is, was that always your intention, to share the wealth?
No, when you look, first of all, when you be young, you've not accumulated a lot of experiences or wisdom, right? But as you do things and you see, look, I always come back to the thing when I started out, right? I worked for 3 years when I arrived in Toronto in 54. I had $200 in my pocket, and 3 years later, I had $5,000 saved up. $5,000 was in 57 was a big amount of money, right? So I rented a small garage and bought a few used machines, and I went out hustling, right? So I worked in the factories, and I said, look, I'm very good in solving problems. If I can't solve the problem, they don't have to pay me. So obviously I solved some problem, because after 1 month I hired somebody. After a year, about 10 people. After 2 years, 20. So it was an evolutionary process. This is when he came to me. Look, I was days when I was hungry, not because I wanted to lose weight. I was hungry, and I had no money to buy food. That I come up with the thing, gee, if I'm going to get the employees involved, how much better could we do, right? Because the first step was I had when I had a foreman, right, and he was a little different. Lately, so I asked him. His name was Herman. I said, Herman, what's the matter with you lately? Well, he said, Frank, I'm thinking of starting my own business. I said, I sympathize with that. So I said, look, let's talk tomorrow. Maybe we find a better answer. I think this is a very important thing here to do well, or to reach her. So anyway, that evening I was talking to myself, if that foreman's going to leave me, that would stifle my growth. No good for me. The next reason was, if that foreman's got to leave me, I can do all the work myself. I'd like that even less. And the third reason was, if I hire a new foreman and then I don't show him how business is run, then I still got to do all the work. And if I show somebody how business is run, he will start his own business, right? So I said the next day, look, why don't we open up a business together? You own a third. And he said, "You mean it?" We went right away to a lawyer, wrote it down, and the way it go, he hustled like crazy, It was his factory, right? So over the next few years, I took 6 more foremen, right? And so after about 5 years, I had 7 factories, cash flowed like crazy. This is when I became sentimental and asked myself, "Gee, if I could get employees, could we eliminate poverty, right? Can we create more wealth?" Okay? So this is a very important thing, and this is where the Stronach Academy will come in, but to shine a different light on it, how you can make things, right? But again, when you be small, you don't need the taxman in your factory, right?
Yeah.
Okay, let the be. But when we should say, right? We don't want to destroy the capitalistic system. We must harness it when it gets big. When it's smaller, let them be free.
Well, I love what you said, and I want to share in closing by saying this, that if you want to make $1, make a difference. And if you want to make many more dollars, just as you shared,
bigger difference.
Frank, before I say goodbye, I do want to say thank you, because for all those that we're socializing the Stronach Academy for entrepreneurship with, for those who are just wanting to get started or scale their business the way you inspire them to do, we thank you. We thank you because at this stage and state in your life, you could be doing anything you want, traveling the world, hanging out on a beach with a Speedo on and a margarita in hand. You could be playing golf, you could be farming, you could be hanging with your horses, but you've chosen to really be a champion, an alchemist for entrepreneurs to really create the new movement, a chamber of citizens, starting with entrepreneurship and imparting your knowledge. So on their behalf and our team, thank you so much. Thank you for being generous. Thank you for being courageous. And thank you for sharing so much.
Okay, the final analysis. In life, when you get older, you realize you should follow a purpose or should have a purpose. It makes life a lot more interesting and more joyful.
Well, a profound point that we'll end on. We respect you. We admire you. We follow you. Entrepreneurs, new and already accomplished, we love you, and we're grateful for your time.
Okay, great. Thank you.
This has been Richard Dolan in a conversation with Frank Stronach as we talk about many things. In fact, all about you, an entrepreneur just getting started, well on your way, wish to stabilize, even scale, and do more. To learn more about how you could become a member of our academy, please hit the link on the page in front of you, and we'll be more than delighted to get back to you. Until next time, I'm Richard Dolan, the CEO of Stronach Academy for Entrepreneurship, with our dear friend, Frank Stronach. Until next time.